Restaurants and romance, empire and opera, fun, surprising experiences at every one of the more than 300 stops on the metro. My name is Lisa. I'm a writer and tour guide. I carry a Canadian passport, but all we'll need is a ticket for the metro system as I show you historic, inspirational, endlessly fabulous Paris. I'd like to share my love for this spectacular city with you, one stop after the next, by way of the exciting Paris metro system. So grab your French phrasebook and put on your walking shoes. We're going to Paris. Next stop, Place d'Italie. Today, I want to take you to the 13th arrondissement of Paris, a neighborhood in the south of the city with many different faces. We'll see high-rise towers, stroll historic streets, check out a mysterious castle, and visit atmospheric Butte aux Cailles. We'll meet artisans and shopkeepers. And we'll discover why this is one of the best places to get to know the real city, far from the major tourist attractions and away from the crowds. This is Place d'Italie. The neighborhood once had a river running through it. In fact, Paris used to have two major rivers, the Seine, of course, and the Bièvre, which has now disappeared. But because of the Bièvre River, this neighborhood was a working class area and has remained so for centuries. In fact, today we're going to check out some of the wonderful medieval buildings which still exist in the quartier, and we're going to explore the lovely contemporary places to hang out. Place d'Italie is not Little Italy in Paris. It's actually the place there were city gates where you had to pay taxes on goods if you were coming into the city. But Place d'Italie does have one connection to Italy, and it's not just its Italian restaurants. For French citizens venturing south on holiday, Place d'Italie is the starting point of the N7 highway, which connects Paris to the Italian border. This is an incredibly old, historic road. In ancient times, this road was used by Roman legions traveling north to Gaul to conquer the city they called Lutetia. Around here, the road's most obvious connection to Italy is the ever-watchful statue of Marshal Juin, who surveys motorists traveling on the Avenue d'Italie. At the beginning of World War II, Juin was a French military man who collaborated with German occupiers. But he eventually joined the resistance movement initiated by General de Gaulle and demonstrated his loyalty during the Battle of Monte Cassino. Today, Place d'Italie is a busy traffic intersection that's interesting to walk around. First, because this is one of the capital's largest shopping centers. Italy, too, is a building designed by renowned Japanese architect Kenzo Tange. Like many subway entrances in Paris, this Place d'Italie metro entrance was designed by Hector Guimard. His Art Nouveau ironwork is classified as a historical monument. The city recently planted palm trees in front of the town hall of the 13th arrondissement. These southern trees shade Le Retour du Fils Prodigue, a sculpture by the Russian-born French artist Ossip Zadkine, right on the edge of Place d'Italie. This used to be the edge of the city of Paris, but then in 1860, the city decided to annex the neighboring villages, and they tore down the city gate that used to stand here and replaced it with this beautiful mairie, or town hall, to be the mairie of the 13th arrondissement below us, the new part of the city. The metro line that runs through here, line 6, actually follows the old city limits. Just above the clock gracing the face of the town hall, we see the coat of arms on the motto of Paris. The boat is perfect for a city that began because of the river Seine. Paris in the Middle Ages was dominated by river trade. Translated from Latin, the motto, Fluctuate net mergitur, roughly means tossed by the waves, she does not sink. This motto is well suited to a city with such a turbulent history. Paris has experienced revolts, revolutions, invasions, and occupations, but the city has always survived, recovered, and prospered. The neighborhood around Place d'Italie was radically changed in the late 1960s. Under the President Georges Pompidou, Paris launched a major urban plan called Italie 13 for the 13th or 13 arrondissement of Paris. Architects were hired to clean up neighborhoods deemed unsafe and rebuild them in the spirit of Le Corbusier. High-rise buildings were supposed to improve density and left more room for automobile traffic. The towers were built off Avenue d'Italie because they planned to build a highway that extended from this Paris neighborhood all the way to Les Halles. Hundreds of buildings were demolished to make way for these concrete towers, destroying huge swaths of the city's history in the process. Fortunately, the project was halted in the mid-1970s due to a policy shift, as well as due to opposition from the local populace. Today, Place d'Italie has an interesting blend of historic and modern buildings. To the south is an important Chinese neighborhood. To the west is the atmospheric Butte aux Cailles. And just over here is the Gobelin neighborhood with the Avenue Gobelin. Let's check out the Manufacture Nationale des Gobelins tapestry factory. Here we are at Les Gobelins, which was started as a fabric dyeing workshop in the 1500s by Jean Gobelin, but became the most famous tapestry manufacturing in all of France. You can go inside and visit where they still make the tapestries using 17th century techniques. This is one of the many legacies from the era of Louis XIV, also known as Le Roi Soleil, or the Sun King. In 1667, the Royal Factory of Crown Furniture was founded by Jean-Baptiste Colbert, one of the king's most influential ministers. The factory later became the Manufacture Nationale des Gobelins. The plan was to gather the best craftsmen to create the finest tapestries, thus ensuring French artistic influence throughout the world. And the plan worked. Here, true works of art have been produced for official buildings around the world, including ministries, embassies, and the Élysée Palace, which is the official residence of the President of the Republic. The Gobelin tapestry craftsmen created these chairs for the cabinet room at the Élysée Palace. Each chair is decorated with the symbol of the office it represents. That way, the Minister of Defense can't steal the seat of the Minister of Culture. Tapestries and furniture not being used are stored in Le Mobilier National, or National Furniture Repository, France's official furniture storage facility. It's located very close to the factory, but it's not open to visitors. The Gobelin artists have always produced tapestries reflecting their era, in whatever classic style is of the time. The factory has reproduced paintings by masters such as Raphael, Rubens, and Goya, but it's also adapted to modern times. The 1960s was a period of great change around the world, and it's when contemporary art began to appear in the workshops on the Avenue des Gobelins. Modern works began to emerge based on paintings by Picasso, Chagall, Miro, and Léger. This tradition continues today with contemporary artists such as Canadian photographer Jana Sturbach. Weavers worked on this tapestry for several months. Using the original photo as a model, they reproduced the subtle color nuances with colored wool. To ensure absolutely perfect reproduction, a wool reserve containing thousands of different shades is available to the artists. And if a specific color is not available, the dyeing workshop will create the perfect necessary shade. Tapestry is a long, slow process demanding great precision. The Sturbach photo will take nearly 3 years to complete. When it's done, the tapestry will be hung on the wall of a ministry or an embassy. For contemporary artists, seeing their work reproduced by the Manufacture Nationale des Gobelins is a true accomplishment. Visitors who see these works are observing a magnificent, fresh interpretation of the original work. There's no shortage of art and treasures around Place d'Italie. Next, I'll take you to see a mysterious castle right after this. We're in historic, exciting, mysterious Paris. We're exploring the city one metro stop at a time, and today we're walking through the streets around the Place d'Italie metro station, where there's lots to discover.
This is the Château de la Reine Blanche. It was built for the Gobelin family in 1500. The Tapestry family built their mansion where an old medieval chateau had been, and that's the chateau that was actually called La Reine Blanche. The original Château de la Reine Blanche was built in 1290 for the widow of Mad King Louis, but it wasn't named for her. It was named for the widow of Philip VI, who was named Blanche d'Evreux, we think. There were a couple of Reine Blanche, so it's hard to keep track of who actually gave their name to this chateau. But the big event at this mansion was for Charles VI. There was a big party here. He got all dressed up in a costume, but at the masquerade ball, his costume caught fire. Now, we think that's why in 1404 he ordered this chateau demolished, because he was feeling a little bit vindictive after the party.
Today, what we call the Castle of the White Queen is actually a group of buildings located behind the Manufacture Nationale des Gobelins. Over the years, several buildings have been grafted to the original Gobelin family residence, including a brewery and a dyeing factory. But as the industry changed, the buildings were abandoned. In 1980, the building was classified as an historic monument and finally underwent a beautiful restoration. Today it reflects the original appearance, though it's divided into small private apartments, a building steeped in history. Let's check out the more contemporary face of this neighborhood with a building that dates from the 1960s when the 13th arrondissement was in turmoil.
This is Gratte-Ciel numéro 1, the first skyscraper built in Paris in 1960. It was very controversial, though architect Albert really tried to fit it into the cityscape of Paris by making this building exactly the same height as Notre Dame Cathedral.
Gratte-Ciel numéro 1 has a couple of other nicknames. The Albert Tower, after the architect's name, as well as Kohlbarbe Tower, which is the name of the street here. At the time of its construction, the building was part of the city's new plan to offer inexpensive housing to Parisians. The 13th arrondissement had many old, poorly insulated buildings with terrible sanitation and non-existent plumbing. This working-class neighborhood became a laboratory for urban planners and architects who tried out new housing concepts, radical modern materials, and cutting-edge construction techniques. Here, the structure is composed of concrete-filled steel columns and prefabricated stainless steel-cladded panels. For the time, it was all new, and it still looks pretty radical. However, in real life, it wasn't soundproof, and it was very poorly insulated. It was very cold in winter and too hot in summer. Yet this building was a great improvement compared to some of the old slum neighborhoods that still exist today. The Albert Tower includes a quirky sixth-floor terrace with painted geometric ceiling designed by Jacques Lagrange, who worked on the hilarious Jacques Tati movies. But architect Albert might not be too pleased to know that his skyscraper today is listed as a historical monument. Albert actually refused the highest French honor, the Légion d'honneur, for political reasons, not once, but 3 times. Let's cross the Rue Kohlbarbe because Gratte-Ciel numéro 1 looks over one of the nicest parks in the area.
This square, Renégal, used to be the Ile des Singes, a little island in the middle of the Bièvre River. But then the Bièvre was paved over, And it was only in the 1930s that this park was planted and turned into a beautiful place to jog and for children to play. It also has a little unknown detail hidden deep in the park. The Bièvre here is the only part of the river that's been cleaned up and rescued and opened back up here in this square, René Le Gall.
It's difficult to imagine that this stream was once a river that flowed through the neighborhood, a river as crucial as the Seine. The Bièvre was 35 kilometers long, its source in Yvelines, a region south of Paris, and out in the suburbs. I have to say the Bièvre looks like a normal, charming little river. But once within city limits, the Bièvre became a hard-working river and a kind of sewer as it flowed towards the Seine. The river attracted all kinds of industries to the neighborhood.
The Bièvre River is the reason the Gobelins set up in this area. Mills, tapestry makers, fabric dyers all needed a lot of water for their industry. But all of this work polluted the river.
By the middle of the 19th century, the pollution threatened the health of residents, and the river was covered over. The Bièvre became part of the Paris sewer system. Today, the Bièvre meanders its way beneath the streets of Paris in almost complete anonymity. People relaxing here don't necessarily think about the long-forgotten island Île des Singes, with its tavern packed with factory workers having a drink. Today, the park looks like any of the capital's other parks, a peaceful haven in Paris to enjoy a little break or let the kids run around. Children playing in the park surely don't realize there's a river flowing beneath their feet. But if you're curious about the real story, follow the brass plaques on the ground that mark the old Bièvre River's path through the neighborhood. The Bièvre used to flow past a rural hill, the Butte aux Cailles. We'll visit the popular rebellious hilltop right after this. We're in rebellious, creative, exciting Paris. We're exploring the sights around metro station Place d'Italie, a working-class neighborhood which historically has been home to many workshops and factories. Many apprentices learn skills on site, but some industries like bookbinding require a more specialized workforce, which is why this school was built on Auguste Blanqui Boulevard.
This is the École Supérieure Étienne, a school of art and book design. It was founded in 1896, and a lot of famous French artists have studied here, including the photographer Robert Doisneau.
In fact, from 1925 to 1929, before becoming a photographer, Robert Doisneau studied lithographic etching here. The school gets its name from the Étienne family, a family of printers and publishers during the 16th century. When it opened its doors in the late 19th century, the school was responding to an urgent need for skilled labor. The book industry was growing rapidly, and there was a serious shortage of workers to run the workshops. Today, the school trains students for careers in graphic arts and design, and also in crafts such as typography, binding, gilding, engraving, illustration, and animation. We live in a world where tradition and modernity constantly meet. Here in Paris, there's always been a blend of the industrial and the artistic. The school's goal is to train open-minded professionals who know all the aspects of the art they choose to pursue. Of course, computers have revolutionized many of these professions, but the school continues to include traditional techniques such as lead letterpress. This technique consists of imprinting texts with lead characters, letter by letter, word by word. It's work that's done at a slow pace, surrounded by the smell of ink and printing paper. Over the years, the Étienne School has been forced to expand its premises, add new machines, and build new classrooms. The additions span multiple levels, and sometimes you even have to go down to the third basement to find certain workshops. Students are lucky to have access to unique equipment, as well as a motivating, creative atmosphere. The Étienne School has an excellent reputation among professionals of different trades, and the majority of graduating students have no problem finding a job. stay on Auguste Blanqui Boulevard but cross beneath the elevated metro tracks. There are only a few places in the city where the metro comes above ground, and there's a great market here. Marché Auguste Blanqui sets up a couple of times per week near Place d'Italie. Meat, cheese, vegetables, the best of the Paris region and the French provinces can be found right here in these market stalls. And since Paris is such a cosmopolitan city, we can find all the basic ingredients for the most exotic of cuisines. Considering the high cost of living in the French capital, the prices here are very reasonable, which keeps the market busy. Traders are friendly and always ready to let you know how to best use their products. It's a spectacle of color and noise and smells. And though it gets hectic, there's always a relaxed atmosphere. Like all the street markets, this one is only open a few days per week, from 7 a.m. until about 2 p.m. every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. Come and enjoy Marché Auguste Blanqui. If you finish shopping, come with me through the modern archway of 51 Auguste Blanqui Boulevard, up the steps to the Brassailles Garden. After the noisy market and elevated metro line, the quiet atmosphere of this small park is quite magical. This is part of an old quarry, which explains the steep climb. This is the beginning of La Butte aux Cailles, one of the quietest and most magical old-fashioned neighborhoods in Paris. It's surrounded by busy streets, Auguste Blanqui Boulevard, Tolbiac Street, and Vergniaud Street. La Butte aux Cailles literally means the Hill of Quails, but it's not really named for small birds. The name comes from Pierre Caille, who bought the land in 1543. At the time, there were several vineyards and windmills up here, for which many streets have been named. Here we have Rue du Moulin des Prés and Rue du Moulinet. Mills were quite common here because Butte aux Cailles is the highest point in Paris. It doesn't seem very high, but its summit is actually higher than Montmartre or Mont Sainte-Geneviève. You might wonder how some quaint little streets survived the concrete wave of rebuilding and renovation that swept through the 13th arrondissement. But it's simple. This used to be an important Paris quarry. Stone from the base of this hill was used to build all the pretty beige stone Parisian buildings. So this Quail Hill is now a bit like a Swiss cheese. Even though the area was made safe over the years, it's much too unstable for high-rises. La Butte aux Cailles has kept its charm and its surprises. Stroll down Daviel Street, which looks like any other street around here, but come over to number 10, and you'll find yourself in Alsace, or rather, Little Alsace. 40 small Alsatian-style houses are grouped around this tree-lined courtyard. Originally, these houses were built for the families of workers from workshops and factories below the Butte aux Cailles. When these factories closed, some of the more dilapidated houses were destroyed to make way for modern buildings, but Little Alsace escaped demolition. Today, it's the same as it was when it opened in 1912, a little piece of Alsace province in central Paris, even though it doesn't have the sauerkraut or the storks. Walking in the streets of the Butte aux Cailles is a real old Paris experience, where you don't see many tourists, and you might actually strike up a conversation with a born and bred Parisian. The Butte is famous for its cheerful bars, student hangouts, and cozy, welcoming restaurants. But despite the Butte's relaxing daily life, it's important to remember that the Butte aux Cailles was the scene of dramatic events in Paris history.
This is Place de la Commune, which commemorates the Commune of 1871, which was supposed to be this great revolutionary push towards a better democracy in Paris and in France. However, the revolution was brutally suppressed by the government, who hired foreign mercenaries to come in and obliterate the Communard movement.
Today, children play quietly in a place that hosted very dramatic events. This location really holds the legacy of the Commune, when people demanded and created real democracy for a few brief months. In spring 1871, Parisians drove out their unpopular government and announced a new democratic nation. But while the new government of the People's Commune pushed their society towards real social progress, the old monarchist government, hiding out in Versailles, made a violent return into the city. After fierce fighting, thousands of communards were killed or deported, and many men, women, and children from this tightly knit community were murdered. One of the last battles of the tragic Paris Commune took place here, on the Butte aux Cailles. The Place de la Commune is named in memory of that tragedy.
As a result, just up the street on Rue des Cinq Diamants, today there's an association dedicated to the history of the Commune of 1871. And the next time you're in Paris, you can just wander over and check them out.
The association Friends of the Commune was created in 1882 when the first exiles from the Commune received amnesty and returned to Paris. Today, the motto of the association is, "The body is in the ground, but the idea stands." The headquarters of the association has many historical documents available to the public so that these ideas will never be forgotten. The Butte aux Cailles is not only historic, it's also great for foodies. We'll get a taste right after this. Welcome back to fascinating food-filled Paris. We're exploring the neighborhood around Metro stop Place d'Italie in the 13th arrondissement. This is one of my favorite local shops, Les Abeilles, on the Rue de la Butte aux Cailles. For over 20 years, Les Abeilles has been the hive of activity for all things bee-related. The shop sells 40 different kinds of honey, and each variety is from a different plant. The honeys contain the properties of the plant. For example, linden honey is ideal for relaxation. Eucalyptus honey soothes a sore throat. Heather honey is an antiseptic. And savory honey, well, apparently it's good for sexual fatigue. Each honey has a different taste and texture, and generally, the darker the color, the stronger the flavor.
This one is definitely my favorite one, the garrigue. The garrigue is great. And it's actually a group of plants. It's not even just one plant. It's a bunch of plants that grow only in the south of France.
Just like wine, the production of honey depends on the weather. There are good years and bad years. Everything depends on the arrival of spring, on rain and drought, and the factors that influence the flowering of plants and trees influences the behavior of the bees. If you visit Les Abeilles at the beginning of your stay in France, don't hesitate to pick up some honey. It won't spoil. Honey lasts for hundreds of years, and as it ages, it just changes texture and crystallizes. Crystallization is faster or slower depending on which plant is used by the bee. But remember never to add water to honey. This makes it ferment and turns it to alcohol. Mind you, that's the basic recipe for mead, which this shop also sells. Alongside the honey, Les Abeilles also sells great-smelling soap, candles, sweets, and beeswax. For your health, don't forget to try a variety of propolis products, a natural antiseptic produced by the bees. In Paris, there are nearly 500 hives used by amateur beekeepers. Les Abeilles sells all the necessary equipment to take care of these hives, including traditional beekeeping outfits.
It's great. I feel completely protected. This is what I need on the Paris Metro. No one will bother me. It's fantastic. I love it. Okay, I'm set. I'm dressed. Thanks. Bye-bye.
But we can't live off honey alone. I need a little lunch break. Just up the street is a great cooperative restaurant, Le Temps des Cerises. The name comes from the title of a song written in 1866 by Jean-Baptiste Clément, a song that was popular during the rebellious years of the Commune, and it's been sung by all the great French singers. Located on the Rue de la Butte aux Cailles, this restaurant has a very special history. It opened in 1976 as a workers' cooperative. In France, this is a legal form of self-management, giving each of the establishment's many owners equal decision-making power, regardless of the number of shares he or she has. In a neighborhood where the history of the Paris Commune is very present, this kind of restaurant organization fits in really well. At the time of its opening, Le Temps des Cerises was a fringe establishment that expressed the utopia of the 1970s. It organized free entertainment, and restaurant patrons paid what they could for their meals. This carefree attitude has morphed a bit with time, but the unique communal, slightly anarchistic spirit of freedom endures. You can see examples of it on the signs at the door, translated into all languages. Le Temps des Cerises is usually packed. The menu is limited, but the servings are really generous. This is old-fashioned food, served the way a French grandmother would have prepared it. This is a lunch that'll set me up for lots of walking in the afternoon.
Okay, so what I had today is the pintade from the menu. I had a pintade rôti with French fries and fresh French bread and a glass of Chablis, your health.
Restaurant employees are usually students and artists, all of whom come from very different backgrounds. It's not unusual to find different exotic influences in the food depending on who's doing the cooking. Over the years, Le Temps des Cerises has become a respected institution in the Butte aux Cailles. Born from the ideals that created the Paris Commune, the restaurant continues the values of sharing and freedom around a table. Now let's take a short art walk through the neighborhood to digest a little bit. For lovers of urban art, La Butte aux Cailles is a paradise. Everywhere you can find walls decorated with graffiti and stencil tracings. Many artists live in this relatively inexpensive neighborhood, and each year they organize a tour of their studios. The artists belong to an association called the Les Arts de la Bièvre, which is a play on words. In French, Les Arts sounds like lézard, which means lizard. The studio tour allows us to meet the artists of this neighborhood. Just follow the murals bearing the association's lizardy logo. Some of the artists exhibited in the street have gained international recognition. The sexy silhouettes and puns from Miss Tick have become famous and allowed their author to move from the streets into the galleries. Using stencils, Miss Tick uses ironic, poetic messages to deflect the image of women as objects. As these messages are rather difficult to translate, you might want to get yourself a French-English dictionary before starting the tour, or just ask a local over a cup of coffee. Like most aerosol artists, Miss Tick doesn't practice her art on the main streets. She prefers the quiet little streets of the Butte aux Cailles and its dead ends. The area is a huge open-air gallery for the graffiti where the walls are the art. But there's also traditional arts and crafts going on in the Buttes. We'll visit right after this. We're in magical, inspiring Paris, exploring one of its most enchanting neighborhoods, the Butte aux Cailles near metro stop Place d'Italie. Old-school crafts are alive and well in these streets. Here's one of my favorite small independent workshops, a place that produces real treasures. La Clairière is located on la Rue de l'Espérance, or the Street of Hope. Keep your eyes open because the doorway's easy to miss.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the Clairière, my studio.
La Clairière belongs to Sharon MacDonald, a Canadian who's been living in Paris for 25 years. This former interior designer embarked on a new artistic career after working for one of the best-known names in France, André Potman. But Sharon wanted to pursue her own path with ornate old fabrics, creating one-of-a-kind handmade items. To find her materials, Sharon searches flea markets and vide-greniers, or attic emptying sales, which are garage sales in France. Sharon finds pieces of fabric, lace ribbons, table linen, or accessories, then transforms them in her studio. Anything can be recovered and refashioned. Have a look at these wool pom-poms that Sharon took from a bed awning and transformed into earrings. Another aspect of Sharon's work is fabric printing, a technique that holds many possibilities. Using only hand printing practices, each of her creations is unique as it's decorated according to the size and texture of the piece of fabric right here in the workshop.
I found a really big...
Sharon loves working with linen, a fabric she discovered a few years ago.
What happened to me is I found at the flea market again an old antique nightgown in linen, and I found it so soothing and so comfortable. I thought, I have to make linen nightgowns because people have to rediscover this fabric.
Seeing the clothes, fabrics, and accessories on display here, visitors to the workshop often think of their grandmothers. Sharon admits that her work has a quaint, nostalgic quality, but at the same time, the fact that she reuses fabrics and antiques to give them new life is very much in tune with modern times.
It's so worth it because this is never going to be made again. So, I don't know, I'm quite proud of myself saving these things. I mean, it's not just me. There's so many people doing the same sort of thing. It seems like a world trend, really. You know, this respect for the past after that whole period at the end of the 20th century where progress was better, everything new was better. I think we're realizing that new is not necessarily better.
Through hard work and ingenuity, Sharon MacDonald has created a soft, warm little nest of a workshop here. This discreet boutique in the Butte aux Cailles helps preserve the tradition of French craftsmanship. On the far side of the Butte is St. Anne's Church on the wide Rue de Tolbiac.
And the relics of St. Anne are in the crypt, so it's known as the Church of St. Anne. But what's interesting about the church is that the local chocolate manufacturer put up the money to finish this facade in the Byzantine style, much like Sacré-Cœur up in Montmartre. So the turrets of this church are named for him and his wife, Jules and Honorine.
The church is essentially built on buried stilts because much of the Rue de Tolbiac is built into the embankment of the old Bièvre River. Construction crews had to dig 22 meters deep to find ground solid enough for the big church's foundations. But this church is essential because the earlier chapel had only 350 seats, and by the end of the 19th century, this neighborhood's population was steadily increasing. By 1887, there were more than 30,000 inhabitants, all needing city services.
In 1860, after Baron Haussmann had annexed this village to the city of Paris, he needed to find a way to augment the water supply for the neighborhood. So he started looking for some kind of natural springs. By the late 1800s, they discovered a wonderful hot springs here, 600 meters down, and the water's delicious and still drinkable today. Let's have a taste. It's actually delicious water. Not too sulfurous, quite tasty. The only problem was once they discovered it, the turn of the century, they didn't really know what to do with it. They didn't connect it to the main water system. In 1924, they decided to build a beautiful swimming pool, which you can see behind me, and they use the natural hot spring to heat the pool.
The artesian well today is really popular with local residents, who have no doubt forgotten that this was originally discovered during the renovations of Baron Haussmann. The main spring was discovered by engineer Harold Paulin. so this water has been burbling since 1893. The well is fed by a water table that's about the area of the city of Paris. That means no water shortages in sight. Parisians will be able to continue filling their bottles here for a long, long time. They'll also be able to swim here. This pool was originally a public bathhouse. It was built when many of the neighborhood's inhabitants didn't have baths in their homes. They didn't even have running water. So these baths were essential. All across Paris, people went to the bains-douches, which were located in different parts of the city. The bathhouse in the Butte aux Cailles opened in 1908, and the pool was built a few years later in 1924. At that time, Paris only had 5 pools in the whole city, and only 3 of them were public. The building was designed by architect Louis Bonnier, who designed this, the city's first modern pool in the new Art Deco tradition, a style of which he was an avid fan. It was also the first institution to establish minimum standards of hygiene. Bathers were obliged to shower before entering the pool. At the time, this was revolutionary. There are 2 outdoor pools, an indoor pool and a solarium for sunny days. The indoor pool features architecture unique for Paris, with a vaulted ceiling supported by 7 concrete arches, which rises to nearly 17 meters high. The waters of La Butte aux Cailles are the pride of the neighborhood. Each year, many tourists visit here to swim in the pool, which is listed as a historical monument. Coming out of the pool, you can stroll over to the middle of the first airfield in Paris. I'll fill you in on all the details right after this. We're in exciting, inventive Paris, and we're visiting the neighborhood around metro stop Place d'Italie. We're in La Butte aux Cailles, just one of the city's many charming little nooks, but surely the only one that served as an 18th century airfield.
The first manned flight actually landed here, November 21st, 1783. The first hot air balloon made a manned flight, and it happened in Paris. They took off from the Metro La Muette, the area near what's now the Metro La Muette, and they landed here on the other side of the city.
A plaque here in Place Paul Verlaine recalls the epic voyage of the first 2 balloonists in history, Jean-François Pilâtre de Rosiers and François Laurent Arlandès. For 18th century Parisians, the mere idea of crossing a distance of 9 kilometers in less than half an hour was unheard of. The Montgolfier brothers were from a paper-making family and created the first hot air balloons made of paper. Before sending humans into the clouds, the brothers did tests with animals to find out if living creatures could survive, breathing at such elevated altitudes. So you could say the first real balloonists in history were a duck, a rooster, and a sheep, which all duly went up and down in the balloons. Despite the success of the inaugural flight, the Montgolfier brothers never did sufficiently develop their invention into a commercial success. And for François de Rosiers Pilâtre, his epic story ended tragically in 1785, when he was the first victim of an air accident in history. Centuries after that first hot air balloon, these incredibly simple flying machines can still occasionally be seen flying over Paris rooftops. Paris is famous for its intense nightlife, but tonight let's take in a laid-back local scene typical for the 13th arrondissement. The Rue des Cinq Diamants and La Rue de la Butte aux Cailles are known for their numerous bars, and this one, La Folie en Tête, is one of my favorites. La Folie en Tête has been open since the early 1990s. Initially, they held concerts, but in recent years, municipal noise regulations have become draconian, and that's limited the bar from having live music. Nevertheless, the bar continues to attract a relaxed, friendly clientele. The decor is a mixed bag of street signs, collages, posters, and photos, not to mention a beautiful collection of musical instruments given to the bar by clients. Those who prefer a minimalistic vibe should go somewhere else, because this bar will drive them crazy. Many of the cocktails served here have been given names inspired by the Putokai and its rather rebellious socialist history. You can also order a capirosca with vodka or a capirissima with rum, or you can order a beer or a glass of wine.
That was a wonderful day at Place d'Italie, starting down by Les Gobelins near the old Bièvre River and leading us up here to the Butokai, where we found the beekeeper's shop, Les Abeilles, and we learned about the commune and its amazing cooperatives. Let's see what we get up to next time.